Today, we're going to look at converting customary units of capacity. When I say capacity, that means how much will fit inside something. Think liquids. This is how we measure liquids. So when we're talking about converting customary units of capacity, we are thinking about things like gallons, quarts, pints, and cups. Those will be the four that you're responsible for. You always need a conversion factor when converting. So let's say we want to start and figure out how many quarts are in 3 gallons. So we need to have a conversion factor there, and you have conversion factors attached to this assignment, and you'll see that 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So we start like we have with everything else. We put the unit we're starting with on top, gallons over 1, and we multiply that by our conversion factor, putting the corresponding unit that we're starting with on the bottom and the destination, what we want to convert it to, on the top. So in this case, 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon, so the 4 goes with the quarts and the 1 with the gallon. And as always, the gallons cancel each other out, and we end up multiplying 3 times 4 on the top and 1 times 1 on the gallon, on the bottom rather, and we get 12 quarts as our answer. Fairly straightforward, right? Let's try another one. So let's say we want to see how many cups. Let's say we have 16 cups, and we want to know how many pints is that. So we look at our conversion factor, and we see that 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. So we set up our problem, 16 cups on top, cups on the bottom, pints on top. 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. And then we multiply. We have 16 times 1 on top and 1 times 2 on the bottom. So we end up with 16 over 2. Our cups cancel out, and we're left with pints. So 16 divided by 2, I think we can probably do that one in our head. That equals 8 pints. So 16 cups would be equal to 8 pints. Now sometimes you're going to have to convert more than just one small unit to the next biggest unit. Like for instance, let's say we want to know how many cups there are in 1 gallon. So 1 gallon is equal to how many cups? So now we have to go through a couple conversion factors. We know that 1 gallon was equal to 4 quarts, and we know that 1 quart is equal to 2 pints, and we know that 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. So we start like we always have. We've got 1 gallon on top, and we multiply that by our first conversion factor. So gallons match on the bottom, and we're going to go to quarts on top. 4 quarts equals 1 gallon. That will convert us from gallons to quarts. Then we have to go from quarts to pints. 2 pints are equal to 1 quart. That will get us converted to pints. And then we have to convert finally from pints to cups. And we know that 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. And that will get us to our final destination. So when we look at that big long problem, it's really not very difficult. It's 1 times 4 times 2 times 2 over 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which will give us 1 times 4, which is 4, times 2, which is 8, times 2, which is 16 over 1. And our answer here is 16 cups. Now this is the exact same way we've done it with all the other ones. But there's a shortcut to figuring out some of these conversion factors that some people like to use, and you may have seen this before. It is called the big G. And what the big G is a visual representation of all of your conversion factors for capacity. So if you notice the giant G here, this big G represents gallons. The Q represents quarts. The P represents pints. The C represents cups, and it's too small to write it in there, but there's one last conversion, which would be 8 fluid ounces in each cup. The way you can use the big G is to help you figure out a conversion factor so you don't have to multiply the way we did with the last problem and use 4 different conversions. Let's say we have a problem that wants us to convert 2 gallons to pints. We don't have a conversion factor that goes straight from gallons to pints. However, we can figure one out. What we do is we look at the big G, that's gallons, and then we see how many pints are inside the big G. So if I count here, you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pints inside of the big G. So that means that a conversion factor for gallons to pints means that 1 gallon is equal to 8 pints. And now we can use that same method that we used a minute ago, converting gallons like this, but instead of a big problem like this, we can use our new conversion factor, 1 gallon being equal to 8 pints, and see that if we want to know 2 gallons is equal to how many pints, we can just do one problem. The 2 gallons still goes on top, and we multiply it by our conversion factor that we just figured out, gallons to pints. 1 gallon was equal to 8 pints, and you can see that it would be 16 pints after the gallons cancel out over 1. So our answer would be 2 gallons is equal to 16 pints. And we can verify that over here if we look and we say, okay, well, there were 8 pints in 1 gallon. So that makes sense that in 2 gallons there would be 16 pints. So let's take a look at another example here. Let's say we want to go a really difficult problem. We want to do gallons, let's say 4 gallons, and figure out how many fluid ounces that is. You'll notice that we don't have a conversion from gallons to fluid ounces, but with the big G we can figure that out. So we look at our big G and we see how many fluid ounces are in 1 gallon. So we're going to make a new conversion. 1 gallon is equal to how many fluid ounces. We can figure this out by counting our cups. And if you look here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 cups. And there are 8 fluid ounces in every cup. So if we multiply 8 times 16, we figure out that 1 gallon is equal to 128 fluid ounces. So there's our new conversion factor. Now, instead of converting gallons to quarts, quarts to pints, pints to cups, and cups to fluid ounces, which we could do, we're going to just go straight in one shot and convert gallons to fluid ounces. So 4 gallons goes on top. We multiply that by our new conversion factor, 1 gallon, which is equal to 128 fluid ounces. So on our bottom, we have gallons because we want our gallons to cancel out, and on top we have our fluid ounces, and we have 128 fluid ounces is equal to 1 gallon. So we cross those off, and we end up multiplying 4 times 128 on top, and 1 times 1 on the bottom. And it's always good to keep up our multiplying and dividing practice. 8 times 4 is 32, carry my 3, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11, carry my 1, and 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5, and our answer would be 512 over 1, which is 512 fluid ounces. So if we wanted to convert from gallons to fluid ounces, we end up with 512 fluid ounces in 4 gallons. Now, you may get a problem that asks you to go the opposite direction. So let's say I have 400 fluid ounces, and I want to convert that to gallons. So I want to know how many gallons there are if I have 400 fluid ounces. So we're going to use that same conversion factor that we just made up. 1 gallon equals 128 fluid ounces. I said made up, but really we should say we figured out. We didn't make it up, we counted. And we're going to this time put the fluid ounces on the bottom because we want those to cancel out, and our destination is gallons. So we have 128 on the bottom and 1 on top. So when we multiply those out, we get 400 times 1 on top and 1 times 128 on the bottom, and we end up with 400 over 128, which we have to divide. And again, it doesn't hurt to practice some long division there. 400 divided by 128. 128 goes into 400 3 times for 384. And when we subtract, we get 16. So we get 3 and 16 128th gallons. Now, of course, we can't leave that like that because that needs to be simplified. So it's 3, and we have to reduce the fraction 16 128ths. And you may know, or you will figure out, that 128 is divisible by 16. It goes 8 times. So 16 128ths reduces to 1/8. So our answer here is 3 and 1/8 gallons. Now, 3 and 1/8 gallons, or 3 with a remainder of 16, can be written a couple different ways because we have so many different units in capacity. So if we have 3 gallons and 16 left over, we could write it like this. Since we were dividing ounces, our answer could also be 3 gallons and 16 fluid ounces. However, we know that 16 fluid ounces can be written a couple different ways too. We could call that 3 gallons, and then since there's 8 fluid ounces in each cup, we could call that 2 cups. We could also, since we know there are 2 cups in each pint, we could call this 3 gallons and 1 pint. To know how to write your answer, you're going to have to look at the answer key. Do they want it in just gallons, or are they asking you for gallons and fluid ounces, or gallons and cups, or gallons and pints? Hopefully that was helpful. Good luck.